Over a course of 20 some odd years, only about 1/3 of them today are still living. So she's in that pool of people that have survived, but what are they surviving with? Do they have normal age-related illnesses, or do they have challenges of cancer, challenges of neurological, challenges of other things? So yeah, you are what you audit, right?
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zalle. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Canary Report. I am your host, Michael Zalle, founder and CEO of Yellowbird, the most trusted solution in delivering safety programs nationwide. Joining us today is Jeff Bowers. He's a safety manager for Neenah Foundry company. He is the first past president for ASSP Nicolay chapter. He's an Air Force veteran. He's a founder of Dream Bay Services, a consulting firm focused on helping business identify risk and safety services, as well as a remarkable human being. His career highlights, and this is gonna blow everybody's mind. It blew mine when I read it. As a safety manager, of course, at Neenah Foundry company, a heavy industrial foundry. He's also, as I mentioned, the past president. He is a consultant and advisor. He is an 8-year U.S. Air Force veteran with discipline, structure, leadership, and safety practices, and just all around making things work. His background's in lean manufacturing and business. He works directly with organizations that not only find opportunity for improvement in their EHS resources, but also find ways to improve and de-emphasize or de-risk companies that have safety and hazard challenges. And he's just got a deep understanding of what it takes to be successful. So let's jump in here. Jeff, thank you so much for being with us.
Michael, you're too kind.
It's a pleasure, man. It is a pleasure. I remember our pre-call. You are just a really fun individual to communicate with.
I'm here for a long time, so I'm here for a good time.
I love it. I love it. So on that note, I want to start with the most important thing that has to do with any occupational safety, and that is human beings. And you as a human, Jeff, you have a great story. You have a challenging story. You have a story that shows perseverance and the ability to overcome. These are the things that, in my opinion, make for great human beings and great men and women. And so tell us about your journey, your story of as a young man, and then how you eventually landed to where you are.
Wow. How do I compartmentalize some of my journey?
It's long form. You don't have to.
Some challenging circumstances. My mother and my biological father were never married. They were in the Army together at the time in the late 70s. And I was born in 80. So, ultimately, my mother was discharged from the Army, and our relationship didn't bloom with my father and her. So she moved back to Wisconsin briefly. We had another stepdad in there somewhere, and then that didn't pan out. And growing up in Wisconsin, there's, the Midwest vibe that some of us carry on our shoulder a little bit more than others. But I'm glad to have grown up in Wisconsin specifically. And then as my high school year came around, I ended up going to a foster home and got to grow up in what I would call kind of a diverse environment. Graduated out of a small town just south of Green Bay, and had some rural values instilled in me.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think really made me who I am today is, there was a lot of hard work involved. Nothing's really given. And if you don't grind, you don't earn. So worked a lot of different jobs, everything from roofing to sales to food service, you name it. I was grinding. And then all of a sudden 9/11 had happened. And your intro of me is too kind again, but my service in the military is kind of multifaceted with a background of parents that were serving, and my then girlfriend, now wife. Her father served in the Marine Corps, and after 9/11 kind of happened, it was deep reflection of what can I do for my community, my country, and even my foster brother had joined prior to me. We're the same age, and I consulted with him even and said, hey, maybe this is the direction I want to go. And shout out to a very intelligent foster brother of mine, Tony, who helped me shape into who I am today. But when I had gone into active duty, I had started off in air traffic control. I was a radar operator, and it's a very, very technically challenging career field. Made it through all the training and stuff. Had my first base in Idaho, and had my first son there. And ultimately, as things were kind of evolving, I want to say in mid 03, 04 timeframe, the Bush administration had what's called a force reshaping. And I was low on the bracket of enlisted in my department where I was there. And they said, hey, we have what's called a reshaping that's happening, and critically manned career fields are requesting, skilled and talented people to be moved over. And I drew that card. So at that time, I got transferred over to what effectively would be the Air Force infantry, but those who are in the military circles would understand the phrase security forces for the Air Force. And so went through all that schooling and got to my next gaining base in Tucson, Arizona, which isn't too far from where Yellowbird's corporate office is, correct?
Not far, only about an hour. Yep.
And I gained more confidence from like a public service side of things, where I learned law enforcement, base security operations, and it really opened my scope of trying to figure out, where I fit in the cog of the machine. Now, looking back at it as a safety professional and having gone through business school, which I'll probably talk about briefly, I think to myself, that's what helps me recognize narrow scope things and how it fits in a bigger picture. And you can attack things that way. So that, for me, that was what helped me hone that skill. Got to deploy on a vacation to the beautiful country of Iraq and parts of Kuwait, and came back, served a little bit longer, re-enlisted, got to go from border to border. So I ended up going to Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota and served up in the fields up there. And unfortunately, when I was training for Afghanistan deployment, my lungs just had a dysfunctional problem. And unfortunately, it was something that the major command said is automatic disqualifier for my active duty service. So probably served 8 years active and was on inactive service for 2 years. And what do you do when you have to make a major career change? Well, I thought, well, let's move my family to California. Let's go do some college by the beach. Why not? So, moved my family to Southern California. Was only there just shy of a year. And my family back home in Wisconsin said, hey, we could really use your help if you could move back. And that's what I did.
Where were you in Southern California?
Little place called Oceanside.
I know it well. I lived for 40 years, about 30 minutes north of there. So yeah, I grew up there. So yeah, I know it well. I know it very well. So yeah, so you moved back to Wisconsin, be closer to the family. And
you know what you do when you move back to Wisconsin? You got to figure out where to work that can match all the seasons that we experience. And we like it's spring, and what makes May flowers? Lots of rain. We are just getting pounded right now.
Okay.
But I found some manufacturing work, a lot of local companies in Wisconsin. Wisconsin has great industry. Just a plug for Wisconsin.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Light industrial, some heavy industrial, a lot of construction, because if it's not winter or raining, it's construction. A lot of agriculture. So the different support organizations that just can kind of pop up here and there and support the different cities that need it. There's always somewhere to work around here.
Absolutely. And you had mentioned your first son was born when you were going through your just past basic training in your. Were you in Tucson at the point when he was born?
No, so in Idaho, my first son was born. My second son was born in Tucson, and shout out to my other son. I did get to hang out with my biological father's side of the family, who currently reside down there while I was stationed there, which is great. And but when I moved back to Wisconsin, doing some getting into manufacturing and getting exposed to like lean and Six Sigma through manufacturing stuff, I was like, time for me to pick that college thing back up because I had only had under my belt a short period of time and got to do some vocational stuff online and a little bit on the ground. And I graduated with my bachelor's degree in business administration management. And my minor was in lean manufacturing.
Fantastic. It's great. That was a fantastic journey and a fantastic story. The human experience and the journey of professionals is the reason why we do this podcast. It is such an honor for me to be able to talk to people and learn about who they are and how they got to where they are. And it's so easy in our industry to just generalize, I have a safety guy, or I have a safety person, or a safety gal or lady. And the reality is every single one of us has a journey and what makes us who we are. And I can tell you just from our brief conversation that you are not only a leader, but you're also a great communicator. I imagine you enjoy doing trainings and mentoring and coaching people just from the brief conversation that we had. Am I right?
Thank you. Yes, I got my OSHA authorization to teach 10 and 30-hour classes for general industry, and the bigger the class, the more energized I can kind of feel, and it's really great when you've got, especially, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, when you've got a large class and you might have some people who've got lots of tenure in their role and they've been through hundreds of safety trainings, whether it's online or in person, and they come up to you, or maybe they'll raise their hand in the class and say, I knew that, but what you said doesn't sound like something I heard before. Break that down. Or those are the things that bring me some joy when I'm teaching those type of things. 'Cause as you well know, no safety professional has all the EH and S knowledge in our little space up here. And what's really great is we can bounce some of those things that we're not good off of the individuals who are good at it, whether you're in manufacturing or something else. And we learn through that third party experience.
Absolutely. There's no better way of learning than by teaching. And that's because if you're properly teaching and you're interacting and you're learning about other people's experience and how do you currently do it and how is it done here is always a question that too few people ask. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the regulations. It is about the process of improving how people are doing what they do for a living. There's no such thing as a one standard for safe operation because everywhere you go is going to have a different safe operation. Every circumstance has their definition of a safe operation. So along those lines, it's so funny that you should say that you started in air traffic control. When I started Yellowbird, it was almost 6 years ago. The concept was taking all the people who live on caffeine, as we talked about earlier today, who go site to site to site to site, and they're literally always on the road and they're traveling around and they're doing it for the right reasons because they want the internal human touch and get to know people. But I always say, look, there's a difference between air traffic control and pilots. And at the end of the day, you can't scale you as one person or as a small team. You have to leverage the resources you have available to you. It's just human nature to want to, okay, I'm going to control this. I'm going to do this myself. I'm already paying for my salary or my team's salary. So why bring in an external person? But you realize the leverage that you get by leveraging people you trust. And that's the big part. Trust is, how do we know they're going to do as good of a job or better than I can do? That is part of this journey. And it's funny because as I was talking with you, and we were talking about this training aspect, I realized,
in the back of my head, I'm always thinking about how would I match Jeff in an environment of if somebody from a aviation distribution company needed OSHA 30 training or OSHA 10 training. You'd be a perfect match. You've got some aviation background. You've got the I think you have an OSHA 500 because you can do 10 and 30s.
I'm a 501 guy for the record.
501, excuse me. All right, love it. Love it. Even better. So going back to, or starting with the practicality of your current job, I can't imagine very many things are more, I'll just say risky, dangerous than foundry work. You're dealing in hot metals. You're dealing in heavy things. You're dealing in a very, risk-filled environment. So give us a little bit of an understanding. Well, first and foremost, Neenah as a company and as an organization, can you give us a little background just on your company? I'm sure many people have never heard of Neenah Foundry, and I hadn't. So can you tell us a little bit about the company itself and the legacy?
Absolutely. Neenah has such a storied history. They were a business before the town was named Neenah. And we're talking over 150 years ago. And hat tip to the business for being resilient through so much world events. 150 years ago is a long time to be in business and creating a steadfast product that everybody needs: stormwater and wastewater products. And some of the things that I've learned there, airport runways, they need watershed products, and towns. I was even in New York City when I went to the 9/11 memorial, guess what? There's sewer grates there, things like that. And somebody's got to make these products. And you were talking about, what type of challenges that we have there. Well, Neenah's overcome a lot of things, as time's gone on, because like you said, it's not lightweight stuff. It's literally iron. And when it first comes out, guess what? It's super hot. And so they've evolved over time from, manually handling these parts to integrating chain falls and hoists to putting in different robots that can help grab things that are of high temperature. And what's really cool about how the organization has allowed safety professionals to bring to the table and implement strategy that is risk reduction. It's not just, hey, the baby's ugly over here, fix it. It's a partnership within the business that says, here's what we're seeing, and it has that invisible risk layer, because it's easy to become a safety imposter, right? That psychological safety piece where, somebody may not have grown up in the foundry, and some of these guys are third generation, fourth generation in some cases. So coming into that, I have to look at it kind of like a template. They make things, they have a throughput, and they have little integrated processes that are piece by piece. So we've got to break down those tasks and activities, no different than any other safety professional listening to this. And if you keep that baseline understanding of risk management and you apply it to the small stuff, it's no longer a scary, heavy industrial environment where we've got hot sparks flying over here, or people working in dusty silica type areas, or working on forklifts, manual handling, and other things like that. So I like the fact that when I walk to the facility, I can look at the individuals performing all the work and say to myself, they got 8, 10, 12 hours on this particular job, and they're so methodical. And the pride that they put into something that's going to go in the ground somewhere and they're never going to see, but the hard work that they put into making a quality product, that's something that makes me show up to work every day for them, to remind them, hey, this isn't about getting hurt when you're doing this stuff. If we turn you a little bit this way and give you a better tool, and if we can't manage or, substitute you in front of a hazard, here's some PPE that reduces it. Hopefully I kind of answered your question on that. That's my experience there, at least. And it's never a dull moment. I've been learning so much. June will be 2 years for me there. And there's just something new every day. These places, they have so many departments of support, and there's different spaces where mechanics have to go and crawl into and access. And they've allowed me to be my true self, and they're being comfortable while I'm observing them. And I'm asking these, innocent questions.
Yeah. Oh, well, good.
And they're in a union environment, so they're worried about, oh, is this guy going to be a safety cop, or is he actually being honest in his question asking? Hopefully, with that cultural piece, I'm injecting a little bit of that psychological safety for them to be honest and say, well, we've always kind of done it like this when we were in this other department, or when so and so used to be my supervisor. They coached them on doing things a certain way, and then allowing me to say, why is that? Or is it working for you? Do you have the right tools?
Thank you for that. That was actually really a great answer. I truly believe in my heart of hearts that nobody tries to do things that are dangerous. They do things that are either how they've been trained to do it and don't know any better way, or there is some level of pressure by somebody to do things in a way that is not necessarily the best way to do it to keep them in a least risk environment. And so I think you asking these questions in a way that is open and honest and cares for them is, they're very fortunate to have you asking those questions in that way, because there is a reason it's called a safety cop. And unfortunately, those people still exist in our industry. Hard to identify them, but we all know them when you meet them. And at the end of the day, it's that mindset is the difference between somebody who's going to be successful and somebody who is going to maybe be there, but not really at the level of success that we would all consider to be meaningful. So along those lines, can you tell me about the business itself from, you say, different departments and different places? And so do you have multiple facilities? Is it just in this one area? Do you have distribution centers? Like, how does the soup to nuts, what does the business look like?
Well, it all starts with raw materials. So we need to get in recycled scrap. We mix it with actual rock, where we have different ore that we add to our process that melts down into the right, metallurgic material that we're creating iron. A lot of different carbons, and we've got everything from copper and I can't go into the recipes that we obviously use, but long story short, that's the beginning. So we bring in all this raw material on the receiving end that starts our process, melt it down. And then if you want to look at it from like a crock pot standpoint, we have these holding vats that are literally holding tons of liquid molten iron. And we're talking, somewhere around the 3,000 degree threshold. And we have to transfer it from one large crock pot to something that might look like a ladle container. And then we transport it to a production line. And then we have what's considered like this mold is a pattern. And in order to make your product work correctly, we use something that's kind of like a Play-Doh. And I'm using very layman's terms here. So
No, yeah.
you
Yeah.
have familiarity with Play-Doh and you can mold it. Well, if
I've eaten plenty of it over
Sure.
my lifetime. Yes.
Yeah. So we have these people that's their niche. They make these molds engineering level that can allow 2,000 to 3,000 degree molten iron to sit in it and at a pressurized level, and then create a product. And then of course, in between there, in that molding line process, we've got maintenance and operators that all have to make it all happen. And then, of course, there's a cooling process before it gets to our finishing line departments, where we have people that look at it and say, well, we've got all this excess material as part of the creation process that they have to grind off. They use impact chipping machines. And then we have material blasting. So we've got steel shot media that blasts off excess sand and things like that. There's so many different pieces to the puzzle, and there's always something to look at. And then when it gets to the finishing line, you got to palletize these sometimes 200, 300, 400 pound per piece items, and that's heavy. So you're not just going to shrink wrap it by itself. Maybe in some cases you can, and oftentimes we'll strap it and then got to get shipped, loading in heavy pallets onto heavy trucks or inside of the trailers. And there's challenges with those things. and then it goes off to either a distribution center, as you were discussing. We were recently acquired by the Charlotte Pipe Company. So we're a family of companies, and Neenah Foundry in Neenah, Wisconsin had plant 2 and 3. The original plant 1 plant was taken down years ago. So I'm the primary guy at the Neenah operations in Neenah, Wisconsin. We have plant 2, and our plant 3 operations has dialed back significantly. And but we have several distribution centers throughout the United States.
Do you own those as well? Those distribution centers? Are those your facilities or?
They are. Yeah, they were acquired through time. We have Miami operations. We had Lincoln, Nebraska operations for now is slowly converting over to a more distribution focus. In manufacturing, you've probably experienced where there was a lot of transition from holding on to finished goods and stocking things so that when people wanted to buy stuff, they had an immediate delivery availability. So that instant delivery to the customer. So low lead times, right? Then I think it was probably in the last 10 years, it went to just-in-time manufacturing, where it was you order the thing, then we make it, then we ship it. So we're kind of moving back into that. We're going to stock what's regular for us. We're really good at making these 1,000 parts, and we're comfortable keeping them on hand. So especially as infrastructure around the country, thanks to the past couple of regimes in our government have passed bills and supported billions of dollars of infrastructure money. We support that industry for infrastructure. Stormwater and wastewater is our niche.
Interesting. So stormwater and wastewater. So obviously manhole covers is one that is the obvious that we've spoken about and you see all over. And I think you are probably one of the larger producers, if not the largest producer of those covers and so forth. What other product, in the wastewater world, I imagine like grates and things like that. Like what other things, just for our listener that doesn't understand SWPP and all the other, things in the safety world I have.
That's the environmental side, right?
Yeah, it is. But all the nerding out stuff. But on the actual product itself, what other products are like the big ones besides manhole covers?
So you got to remember that there has to be a frame involved in that as well. So not only do we make just the covers, and of course they can be in different shapes, and then there has to be a frame for it to sit on. And then when things are being constructed and reconstructed, that's set down first. And then that lid that everybody sees on the street is what's mostly exposed. But underneath the substrate is a good size iron frame that it has to sit in. And there's tolerances for all of that. There's innovation that's involved with all the telecommunication things that are going on between fiber optic and other stuff like that. We have to support larger manholes, if you will, because our telecommunication boxes are, 3, 4, 5 foot. Now the frame for that has to match that same size.
Even larger, because at the end of the day, there's that structural underneath.
So the finished product from a safety side of things has to be innovative, because if we don't include some type of a spring to help that 2, 3, 4, maybe even 500-pound lid to pop open, how is that technician gonna not break their back just going into what they have to go into? Neenah has done a fantastic job identifying these nuances that the end user has to deal with. So they've developed technology for spring-loaded things that are safe as much as possible. When our employees in our infrastructure, machine shops, and finishing departments look at the tolerances for those things, they're thinking of, what is this person who's going out, rain or shine, snow or heat, to go fix our fiber optic or telephone networks going into these boxes? How are they going to lift that lid?
Do you manufacture the ladder going down from that cover, or is that a different area? Like, I know that obviously you are above not Neenah. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So I was just wondering, because I know obviously it's into a cavity that needs some kind of a ladder or something to go down. And that is another business, and that's totally fine. Along those lines, what does your safety team look like? I was thinking when you were talking about this process, I had an interview, I don't know, maybe, I think you're probably my 80th some odd, I mean, I love this process. And so I do it often. And there's a guy who said that his first job outside of college was in an environment where everything was trying to kill you.
Must have been in Florida.
Yeah, but it was one of these situations. He's like, it was actually a petrochemical manufacturing process, and they had ammonia and other, like, it was a really like very
Lot to
scary
manage.
environment. Lot to manage. You need to make sure, respiratory and controls, and they had their rinse suits that you had to go through a shower and shower off before you left. I mean, it was he wasn't wrong. It was probably the most intense environment that I could imagine. Yours is probably a very close second when it comes to the stuff, the things, every single item that you mentioned, like the big crock pot, as you said, the big cauldron, 3,000 degrees. So what's used to heat that?
So different foundries have different ignition sources for these things, but for the most part, we're dealing with electrical current that keeps that all heated. And you can only imagine what the electrical bill must be.
As a safety nerd, you're not dealing in 120 you're dealing in 480. You're dealing with
plugging
a lot
it into a
of
normal outlet. That's for sure, right?
no.
Yeah. So the hazardous energy that's there is very prevalent. And the other side of it is, as I kind of mentioned, we have these containers that are ladles. We preheat those as well. We use natural gas torches, things of that nature, because you can't put hot iron into a cold container. If you had an ice cold, thin wine glass and poured boiling water into it, right? So the physics side of our business is super important. And the specialists that we have working for us, they are very good at their jobs. And we've got, like I said, over 150 years of experience. So they've got a track record. Plus, what I've really come to really appreciate with the Foundry world, and shout out to the American Foundry Society, they share best practices in America. Yeah, they're competitors to a degree, but if that one's really good at aluminum, this one's really good at steel iron, this one's good at stainless, they're saying, but here's what we're finding with the logistics part of the process. And they're not afraid to share some of those nuances.
I had a friend the other day say that, he loved what we built here, and that we're really, we're improving the availability of safety specialists and safety standards for companies that no company has everybody. It just is impossible because of all the E, H, and S, and then all of the things underneath E, H, and S are so vast. An example being, like, we're using AI pretty extensively, like everybody else is. And one of the things that our modeling does is, I said, when somebody does a safety staffing job with us, where they need somebody on site for 6 months, let's say somebody goes on maternity leave or paternity leave, or they've been injured, or they just are in a construction zone that they need somebody to be there and they don't have somebody, they'll come to us. And I asked our internal AI system, said, create a SKU list, create a product list of every iterations of our safety professionals just for our staffing offering, not our trainings, not our surveys, not the other things. 64 iterative line items of different people at different rates with different skill sets, just for the one question of, if I need a safety person, can you send somebody out? It's not like, oh yeah, I have a safety guy.
Well, what flavor do you need for that particular industry? Sure.
Yeah, there's petrochemical, there's mining with MSHA, there's, obviously you get into tiers where you got somebody with 10 plus years of experience and has been a director level or above. And then you have a coordinator that you just need somebody, and those are not going to be the same type of people. But it's just interesting that you should say this, because this all came from in the statement that you made on competitors. I said to this gentleman that was saying that, oh, somebody's already doing this thing that I came up with. I said, great. That means it's market validation. It means that there's a market for it. You already know somebody there's a demand.
Yeah.
Question is there enough of it? And if you're in a good business, which you are, there's enough Foundry business for everybody. There's no need to, I don't believe in the Pepsi Coke philosophy that, you have to hate your competitor. At the end of the day, we're all trying to accomplish the same objective, and the markets are plenty large enough for all of us.
And everybody's tastes are a little bit different, including the owners.
Absolutely.
Even for myself, I've worked for a couple of different companies, right? And I've gained what I felt I needed, but I performed a task for them that they needed. And at the end of the day, that's what's really important.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I imagine as you've come on to these various organizations and done your different things, we do a lot of surveys, independent surveys of organizations where you have new eyes and new perspectives looking at things and checking in on a quarterly basis and using different people for that. And I will say that it's almost impossible to do your own grading of your own test.
The feedback loop isn't always open.
No, and especially if you're using your own safety people to judge how safety's going. Well, if it's not going well, then they have to say that they're not doing as well as they could be doing. And it takes a very honorable and frankly confident person to be open about that. Like, yeah, we're not doing a great job at this and we need to improve. So it's funny because in that conversation of serving your owners and your owner groups and your employees, I imagine the risks at your foundry, though similar, are different than they are at another foundry, just by nature of how old's the equipment, how do you do it, what's the process you use versus the process that they use. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting statement that you made there. Going to your personal world, because I like to jump around and that's what I do, and it's my podcast,
It's
so
a
I
conversation.
can't. You've been married a long time.
25 years next year.
Awesome. I was 25 this year.
Congratulations.
You went on 2021 or 2001, huh?
Oh, two, we got married.
Oh, two. Okay. Yeah. So I was in 2000 because I can't do math. So I figured I'd be very comfortably and safe in August of 2000. I always know approximately how long I've been married. So your wife, does she stay home or does she work?
My wife has suffered a fate that she didn't deserve. Her dream was to be a stay-at-home mom. And I like to say I helped father that in. So,
Okay.
but prior to that, she did some dental assisting, and her niche, she's really good at keeping things organized. She did some office management, but then we joined the military, and then I want to say it was middle of 2008, she came down with Hodgkin's disease. And it was in between my deployment from Iraq and I was supposed to go to Afghanistan. I didn't deploy, but then she came down with stage 3 Hodgkin's disease, and so there was a cancer journey that she went through, and even after we left the military, she was still dealing with post-cancer issues. I've been very blessed with having a partner who is, even through everything that she's been through, just so steadfast and supportive. And when COVID came around, that's where I say the fate that she didn't deserve. Just all of a sudden became allergic to everything. And for some of the listeners, there's something out there called mast cell activation syndrome that's a little bit different for everybody. They may become allergic to materials or foods or smells or touch and exposures. And fortunately, as a safety professional, I'm good at recognizing exposures, right? I'm not saying I'm perfect, and it's already hard being a husband, right? So we do everything that we can to reduce her exposures, and one of her big ones is latex particulates. So it's from a natural standpoint. So you got rubbers and some fruits and vegetables have that natural component, and then you have the synthetics where it's gloves or shoes or carpets and in manufacturing products. Certain chemicals, and it's all anaphylaxia as the end result. So she has really done more research than I think some of the medical community probably does. And she's not the only one. She's in some social media support groups, and unfortunately, people are succumbing to it. Even in the hospital with epinephrine drips, they're passing away.
Was this a result of the treatments of the Hodgkin's disease, or because I asked because my father had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he has hives that we have not been able to identify where they're coming from. and he's really been suffering with that. And when you just said this, I'm like, wow, maybe this is actually something that I should speak with him about.
The health part of our job is safety professionals. It's always evolving. And every human has different chemistry. One of the things I mentioned earlier with my wife's side of the family, her dad and mom, they were stationed at a Marine Corps base on the East Coast that publicly had a water contamination issue. And as the environmentalists of listeners would agree, when you have drinking water contamination and it goes undiagnosed or pushed aside and with willful nature, people die through different cancers or long-term exposure. And some people survive. And then there's the living with issues. And so there's actually a class action lawsuit regarding this type of thing. And so she's actually a part of that. And as it was a military installation, it's government related. So there's just a lot of challenges of root cause analysis. Is this particular illness that you're dealing with directly related to your exposure in utero? Your mom drank the water. How's she doing? One of the things that we learned through the law firm that we're dealing with is of the group of children that were born on the base over a course of 20 some odd years, only about 1/3 of them today are still living.
Oh, wow.
So she's in that pool of people that have survived, but what are they surviving with? Do they have normal age-related illnesses, or do they have challenges of cancer, challenges of neurological, challenges of other things? You are what you audit, right? In any organization. So in our relationship, I've taken that same model of doing some deep dives, asking tough questions, and doing the research. And hat tip to my wife for allowing me to be the husband I can be.
Well, as a man who one has married a lady who sounds very similar to your wife when it comes to research, my wife can find out just about anything. She'll go as deep as she needs to go to, especially when it comes to our children. But fortunately, God willing, she hasn't had to deal with what your wife has personally. But that being said, it's a skill. It is a skill to have the ability and willingness to go and deep dive. Some people are wonderful at it. Some people are not. And, like we talked about when it comes to our careers and our businesses, there is no such thing as one size fits all for anything. When it comes to these things, having somebody in your life like your wife is a blessing. It's really a gift. And as a man who supports his family, and with your background, I got a hat tip to you, because going through the foster system, and sounds like you didn't have the most stable upbringing when it came to mother and father environment. You have obviously built a life that is wonderful, and two boys, and 25 years married. And I gotta tell you, man, you are the poster child of what a man should end up looking like. So congratulations on that.
I try to think of what's the America I want my kids to grow up in, and what can I do to be the person that they can look up to with as an example. And there's enough busyness going on in the world that and I was a scoutmaster for years too, so I've seen a lot of different kids.
Oh yeah.
For the psychological portion of things, that the more exposure you have to certain things, everybody's going to learn from them differently. Some people take on a more victim mindset. Some people take on a more defensive posture. Some people just brush it off, and today's a great day to have a great day.
Yeah, I'm one of those people, and unfortunately, I get it really irritating to those who are not.
Right.
They call it, what is it? It's something optimism, but whatever it is, it's they think it's disingenuous, and I genuinely feel happy most of the time, and it can be irritating to people. They're like,
there's a lot to be said about the right types of counseling for each person. Not everybody is a right candidate for counseling services. Me leaving the military, and from a medical standpoint, I was mad. I was like, I wanted to make a career out of it. I had lost some people that went to Afghanistan from contact standpoint, and some people had different experiences than I did. And I'm sure that there's some veterans listening on the podcast. Matter of fact, I think 2 episodes ago you had a veteran on. But anyway, long story short, if people take and invest in themselves, and sometimes it takes a third party to help with that process, you learn a lot about yourself. And for me, and this may or may not resonate with some people, I only have what I can control, what's in front of my 2 hands. And without pointing fingers and by trying to control things, and everybody has their own skill set of those type of things, what impact can I make? So when I go to work, or when I'm with my kids, or when I'm doing things with friends, I think to myself, how can I bring out the best in me to show up every day, so that when they experience it, they say, I'm going to show up for him because he showed up for me.
You may not realize this, and I'm going to give you a compliment that I've never given anybody else openly. But talking about your journey here, you have chosen a life of service at every single step of your journey. I mean, from being a scoutmaster to being serving in the military, to giving the credit to your foster brother, and going through in a teamwork environment, to serving your wife in her journey. And I got to tell you, man, you are truly one of the most service-oriented men I think I've ever talked to. It's really impressive. And so thank you for that. I can't imagine the number of people who will credit you for impacting their lives because of that. So thank you for that. Along those lines of your personal world getting into a more lofty and fun conversation, I asked this question a fair amount, and I think you probably know what it is because you've listened to a few of my episodes. But for fun, do you do anything that is high risk? And I found that people in safety often are into things that they manage their risk, but they're into things that are higher risk, like drag racing or welding or skydiving, and aeronautics of experimental planes, all kinds of things. So is there anything that you're into that is unusual risk profile?
So I'm a habitual trier. I like trying new things that may have risk associated with it. I have not left the door of a perfectly good working airplane while it's in the air, but
I have not either.
I have a strong respect for heights. It's not the fall that kills you; it's the sudden stop at the bottom. But it's been on my list. But what have I tried? Having shotguns in the military, a lot of different weapon systems. I'm not an avid hunter, but I've gone on a couple of hunting adventures. I've done some snowboarding in my youth, but then have tried picking it back up in my adult life and found out that I'm not as coordinated as I used to be. And so, tried that. I love cooking. Is it high risk? Probably not. But, never trust a skinny cook. So I love cooking.
Well, it does have sharp objects, and I know many of the cooks in my life that have ended up in the emergency room. So I'm not going to say it's low risk either, because these blades are meant to cut things.
I ride a motorcycle occasionally. In Wisconsin, it's a kind of a short-lived activity.
What kind of bike?
I currently have a Harley. It's an 03. Nice bags on it,
Like I said, that would be the definition of that I'm talking about. See, these things are the things that folks always think of these. Anybody who's in safety is like, oh, they're so square, they don't want, but it's like, if you talk to us, we're all kind of, in fact, many of us are quite the contrary. I'm learning to weld and I'm restoring an old Bronco, an old Ford, and I'm doing it myself. And yeah, I cut my hand and I, burn myself, and I've had all kinds of things that if I did it in my work environment, I'd probably pay more attention.
Looking at your office, I don't see a lot of hot work opportunity in there.
No, not in this office. Not in this office. But that's why I go home and do stupid things, because I do like, I'm a hands-on kind of a guy. I do enjoy that. Well, my friend, I am so appreciative of this conversation. I hope that we have another one someday and that we meet each other in person. I actually know Wisconsin pretty well. I used to have an office in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin for a while. We had a satellite facility out there, a satellite uplink facility in my past life. But it's a beautiful part of the world for parts of the year. And then it's a part of the world I will never go back to in other parts of the year because I've never been colder in my life than winter in Wisconsin. Probably because I was unprepared and coming from California. But thank you so much for being on here.
Can I close this out with a statement?
Please do.
I spent a little bit of time, prepping for, I noticed that you got these tags on your podcast, and I thought to myself, what would I want people to take away from our conversation today? And I kind of got it typed up here. Strong safety culture lives at the intersection of psychological safety, lived experience, and consistency across people, backgrounds, and shifts. And I'm a second shift guy for Neenah Foundry, so I figured that was a worthy way to kind of bring that up.
I absolutely love it. Thank you for doing that. I always want to make sure that you get out of this podcast the message that is most important to you. And so I'm so grateful. I hope that the journey with your wife is going more smoothly than it once was and continues to go better every single day.
Much appreciated. Thank you for that.
I thank you again, my friend.
Thank you, Mike.
Have a great day.
That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.